the resort. These 3 assembly points are the safest areas the guest will gather in the event of a fire disaster, earthquake, tsunami, or other natural disaster. Standardized emergency safety equipment can be found in each building blocks, including smoke and heat detectors, fire sprinklers, hydrant boxes, and fire hoses, fire extinguishers, first aid boxes, and several emergency exits. Sofitel Bali Nusa Dua Beach Resort has put in place standard safety procedures to ensure that in the case of an emergency, all guests are safe. These procedures are: a general alarm will be activated, followed by public announcement in 5 different languages in the case of an evacuation. The emergency rescue team will assist all guests to safety. Beach security will assist guests to the nearest assembly point. Housekeeping supervisors will stand by in all guest corridors and pull pathways to assist guests to the nearest assembly point. Cuisine and Cucina restaurant managers will stand by at their designated restaurant areas to assist guests to the nearest assembly points, while the front office manager will stand by at a lobby assembly point to assist guests to safety. At the same time, emergency dispatch services such as the nearest fire department and police station will be contacted immediately. In the case of an emergency, you must be aware and alert and follow these steps. Call 4444 or 081-138-86023 if you are in the room. Stay calm and don't panic. Leave the room immediately. Bring only valuable things with you. Close and lock your room door. Don't use the elevator. Follow the emergency rescue team's instructions or the evacuation sign direction to the assembly point. Kecak and Gamelan are the main ballrooms for functions. Your event is most probably in one of these ballrooms. Both ballrooms have been fully equipped with standardized emergency safety equipment, such as smoke and heat detectors, fire sprinklers, hydrant boxes, and fire hoses, fire extinguishers, first aid boxes, and several emergency exits aside from the main doorways. Kecak Ballroom's evacuation route. In the case of an emergency, you are expected to exit through the main door or emergency exit, straight to the nearest assembly point at either the main lobby or the loading dock. You will be escorted at all times by our emergency rescue team, who will be wearing this orange uniform. Gamelan Ballroom's evacuation route. In the case of an emergency, you are expected to exit through the main door or emergency exit, straight to the nearest assembly point at either the guest parking area or main lobby. Thank you for watching this important safety briefing video. Enjoy your magnifique stay at Sofitel Bali Nusa Dua Beach Resort.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem of the Republic of Indonesia. be seated.
Nature and human beings are two interrelated components, with a variety of natural resources that are beneficial for the continuity of human beings. Humans should grow by utilizing, along with conserving, natural resources and the environment. The progress of mankind, marked by massive development, should not pollute and interfere with the sustainability of the environment towards our generations to come. Therefore, sustainable development, especially in the infrastructure sector, is the main key to maintaining a balance between development and environment. Still, this is certainly a challenge in itself, because it requires the support and participation of all parties. Indonesia is one of the countries that participate in promoting environmentally friendly or sustainable development. The government's commitment to realizing sustainable development is also mandated to us. PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur or PT-SMI, as one of these special mission vehicles which has strategic roles and tasks as the government's fiscal tool to accelerate development. Through the three pillars of our business, along with trust and other assignments given by the government, we support in accelerating sustainable development through various initiatives that address various aspects of concern for the environment and the future. We are recognizing the important role of various strategic partners and donors in contributing to accelerate development for sustainable economic growth. Up to now, we have contributed more than 770 trillion rupiah in financing to various projects. Since 2018, we have actively participated in encouraging various initiatives in the context of sustainable development. One of them is being a pioneer by issuing the first green bond in Indonesia that supports and preserves the environment. In addition, we also offer various solutions and innovations to support the achievement of the SDGs through various infrastructure projects and actively build collaborations with various parties. With various roles and mandates given and carried out, the principles of good corporate governance have not escaped our attention. The implementation of ISO 37001 Anti-Bribery Management System (SMAP) standard in the company's operational activities is a form of responsibility and commitment to maintain compliance to create a transparent and better business world. With enthusiasm and optimism to develop trust and capacity as a credible institution in carrying out sustainable national development programs, the flames of our spirit will always burn to keep innovating and be fully committed to support the achievement of a just, advanced, and prosperous Indonesia.
Every achievement started with a single step. We may look forward, but our present actions should be accountable. In a resource-constrained world, longevity is carved by our actions. Our actions reflects our intention. Our intention reflects our responsibilities. Time passes, environment changes, but vitality of life remains. Every shift, every relapse, the essence of life dances above seas of time. The best time to invest is decades ago. The second best time is today. A good business makes profit. A great business makes impact. Building this nation goes beyond the value chain. It takes knowledge. It takes perseverance. It takes passion. And above all, it takes commitment. We are here to flourish, to evolve, and together we are here to leave a legacy. We are confident with our future goals by being committed to our present consistency. Our value is timeless as we catalyze a sustainable development for this nation. We preserve tomorrow's by securing today's. We are the enablers for sustainable development. We are the catalyst to secure a future that the upcoming generations can reap. We are PT Indonesia Infrastructure Finance.
PT Indonesia Infrastructure Finance goes beyond than just an infrastructure financing institution. IIF is a catalyst, enabler, and an accelerator for a sustainable infrastructure development in Indonesia. Established in 2010, these mandates has been carried out through numerous projects all across the Indonesian archipelago. We actively instigate private participation in infrastructure investment through our financing and advisory services for the good cause of building this nation. IIF stands by its sustainability values, supported by our prominent shareholders, experienced management, and talented experts. We assure that our operations are implementing social and environmental policy safeguard that is accredited on a global scale. Over a decade of our existence, IIF has proven our premise that we are not only here to come, but we are here to move forward in leaps and bounds. IIF will always be committed to make an impact to the growth of this nation through sustainable infrastructure projects.
Indonesia's situation, nature, and its content are getting worse and out of control. We need to take an action and contribution in improving the situation. Currently, nature and its environment are not in their best state. To maintain the nature and the environment we are in now, we must take action and contribute to improve our situation, not only for the present, but for the future. There's a hope, there's a new spirit. By holding hands together, unite the commitment and never-ending activities, there will be great and magnificent result for the better world. Together, with hope and full spirit, let us be committed to sustain and unite in ensuring a better tomorrow. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semuanya. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Sofitel Bali Nusa Dua Beach Resort for PT SMI and IIF Road to G20 Sustainable Finance, Instruments and Management in Achieving Sustainable Development of Indonesia. Can we have a big round of applause for our event today, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much. First of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Andrea Lee, and I will be your host for today's event. It is an honor for me to be here, and I hope everyone is in a good condition. I would like to inform you that today's event has followed the COVID-19 health protocols in accordance with the government's instructions. Everyone involved has been tested with negative result, and everyone's on duty is to continuously wear their masks, safely distance, and to use hand sanitizer frequently. However, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to host this event without my mask on for a clearer and a better sound. Furthermore, now allow me to welcome our distinguished guest of honor this morning. Welcome the Honorable Minister of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, along with the board from the Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia. Good morning and welcome. The President Director of PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur Persero, Bapak Edwin Charuzat. Selamat pagi, selamat datang. The President Director of PT Indonesia Infrastructure Finance, Bapak Renaldi Hermansyah. Good morning and welcome to the Board of Commissioner of PT SMI and PT IIF. The speakers of today's discussion, Sustainable Finance, Instrument and Management in Achieving Sustainable Development of Indonesia. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, to our speakers, and also to all of you who are here with us today, both in person and virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, according to the several studies, climate change impact risk to life continuity is still considered as a huge risk in a view that the energy sector is currently becoming the highest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. The mix of energy produced from coal with renewable energy becomes significant as proclaimed in the Nationally Determined Contribution, or NDC, as it correlates with the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Indonesia's target to achieve the SDG requires active participation and synergy from all elements of the nation, which includes the government, the society, and also the business players. PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur Persero, or PT SMI, a state-owned enterprise and special mission vehicle, or SMV, under the coordination of the Ministry of Finance through its business pillars, along with PT Indonesia Infrastructure Finance, or IIF, a private non-bank financial institution, established a joint venture between the government of Indonesia and multilateral agencies, realized the need to take an active role in this national effort and ambition. Therefore, PT SMI and IIF take the innovative action to establish various financing products in accelerating Indonesia's national development that consider an eco-friendly development aspect. And those actions need to be taken by PT SMI and IIF to contribute in reducing environmental impacts occurred due to development. And part of the sustainable development is through knowledge sharing. Hence, PT SMI and IIF held a business forum with the theme of Sustainable Finance, Instruments and Management in Achieving Sustainable Development as a road to the G20 event, and collaborates with Business Indonesia, prominent national media, to provide live streams and broadcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, to kickstart our events today, I would like to invite our moderator to the stage. Please welcome Ibu Andini Effendi.
Nomor 1 ya, Ibu.
And next, please welcome to the stage the President Director of PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur Persero, Bapak Edwin Syahruzan. Please welcome on the stage the President Director of PT Indonesia Infrastructure Finance, Bapak Renaldi Hermansyah. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please joining me in welcoming to the stage the Minister of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati. Please be seated. Thank you very much. And to begin our session today, let us hear an opening speech from Bapak Edwin Syahruzan, the President Director of PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur Persero. Bapak Edwin, the stage is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Your Excellency, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Minister of Finance, Republic of Indonesia, along with the boards from Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia, speakers in today's discussion, Ibu Masita, Pak Enrico, Mr. Jiro, Pak Renaldi, Pak Darmin, and Board of Commissioners of PT IIF, Board of Commissioners PT SMI, and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me be grateful for the blessing from the Almighty God that has given to us. Hence we can gather both in person and virtually this morning. The issue on climate change impact has been a serious and urgent agenda that needs to be addressed jointly with the effort from all nations. Therefore, serious actions to create an inclusive, sustainable products from the financial sectors has been a crucial topics that we should focus on. PT SMI believe that sustainability-linked finance and investment is becoming evident, looking longer term and go beyond just financial consequences. The existence of sustainable finance open broader investment opportunities for sustainable-oriented parties. With that in mind, PT SMI as one SMV under the MOF take part in accelerating the adoption of sustainable finance by applying ESG principle. To date, we have set an annual sustainable finance target and have it included in the Sustainable Finance Action Plan report as required by the OJK in Indonesia. We envision ESG framework to be developed and implemented in PT SMI together with relevant committees in which all issues related ESG can be planned discussed, evaluated, and reiterated. To show our commitment, PTSMI has made several efforts to become a reliable institution in terms of sustainability in our projects. For instance, PTSMI has the dedicated division to support the sustainable project, not only the projects, but we also ranging our commitment to sustainable finance through product innovation, blended finance, and also an integrated platform. Some concrete example, PTSMI has financed renewable energy projects with a total commitment of close to $500 million equivalent, consisting of variety of renewable energy technologies such as hydro, solar, wind power, biomass, and also geothermal. Also through blended finance platform, namely SDG Indonesia 1, PTSMI manage a blended finance facility platform which mobilize funds coming from variety of multilateral institutions, donors, as well as philanthropy, which having the same urgency for sustainability of the planet. The implementation of sustainable finance can be complemented through multi ways. Within the sustainable finance itself, there is a subset of climate finance which focus on emission reduction. PTSMI currently entered into climate finance area, which is more complex, to support the government's role in supporting emission reduction, start from nationwide, which in turn will contribute to joint effort for sustainability globally. In a climate finance itself, we could start the focus from early stage, which is transition. Therefore, PTSMI chooses to take action to help transition phase through energy transition finance as financing that aim to facilitate energy transition at accelerating phase. One of the upcoming things that we enthusiastically will introduce in the short moment is the energy transition mechanism country platform. Ladies and gentlemen, initiative and action provided by PTSMI and all partners are expected to contribute on sustainable development in Indonesia, aligned with today's discussion theme, which is sustainable finance, instrument and management in achieving sustainable development in Indonesia. We hope that all the participants can actively discuss on how Indonesia may achieve a sustainable development through support from public and private sectors. Through this session, we would like to build awareness of stakeholders regarding the transition in climate finance, to influence the element to develop inclusive activities in sustainable finance so that Indonesia and the world to be a better place to live. To end, we once again thank Ibu Sri Mulyani for coming, all the speakers, all participants of today's event. We certainly hope that all of us can get an insightful discussion and bring ideas to the table to achieve sustainable development in Indonesia. Let's recover together, recover stronger. Thank you, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Bapak Erwin Syaruzan, for your speech. You may return to your seat. And next, we would like to invite the President Director of IIF, Bapak Reynaldi Hermansyah, to deliver his speech. Pak Reynaldi Hermansyah, the stage is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Nama Budaya, salam kebajikan, selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat, Her Excellency Minister of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, along with the Board of Minister of Finance of Indonesia. Yang terhormat, Bapak Darmin Nasution, President Commissioners of PT IIF, along with the Board of Commissioners and also my fellow colleagues of the Board of Directors. Ibu Masita Kristalin, Special Advisor to the Ministry of Finance, Bapak Enrico Haryanto, Group Head of Integrated Financial Services Sector Policy, Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, Mr. Jiro Tominaga, Country Director of Asia Development Bank, Ms. Zalina Samsudin, Head of International Program Asia Pacific Climate Bond Initiative, Mr. Edwin Sharuzat, Presiden Direktur of PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur, beserta jajaran direksi dan komisaris, and distinguished guests. IIF was founded in 2010 on the initiative of the Ministry of Finance through partnership with several multilateral agencies. IIF was mandated to become a catalyst in accelerating national infrastructure development by enabling the private sector participant. In accordance with this mandate, IIF recognized our responsibility in promoting sustainable infrastructure development in Indonesia. As such, there are 8 social and environmental principles that designed by IIF in an integrated manner to identify potential and social environmental risk and impact. In this business forum, a joint collaboration of IIF and SMI, and also part of the Road to G20 events, we highlight our endeavors and shares our insight on our actions, experience on implementing sustainable developments in infrastructure projects all across Indonesia. This collaboration also marks one of several of the strong collaboration between IIF and SMI on projects all around Indonesia. I think in this first half alone, we have jointly financed several major projects, namely in the field of digital infrastructure and the first PPP project in railways. Aside of that, IIF has also proven its responsibility and its mandate to finance several milestones projects. The first PPP project in toll roads, which is the Cikampek Palimanan. The first PPP project in telecommunication, which is Palaparing Tengah. And also jointly with SMI, the first PPP project in water, which is in East Java. The concept of sustainable development was first introduced as a social goal at the United Nations Conference on the Environment in Stockholm in 1972. It was communicated that the interests, which there are 3, economics, social, and environmental, must work harmoniously and not mutually exclusive. As we will discuss about the instruments and management of sustainable infrastructure development, in the aspect of instrument, in January 2001, after the government has issued its global bond, IIF also issued its first sustainable bond, which was successful at that time, and also followed by SME with their global green bond. On today's topic of achieving a sustainable development in Indonesia, in the afternoon, my colleague, Pak Wito Tantra, will speak in depth about a specific principle of ESG, which is biodiversity conservation and cultural property heritage, a principle which is very unique in Indonesia. I hope at the end of this business forum, we can have a deeper understanding on the framework and actual steps on implementation of sustainable development. Finally, I would like to express our appreciation to all of the speakers that has set aside their time to be here in Bali in person. And with that, allow me to wish all of you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Bapak Reynaldi Hermansyah, for your speech. You may return to your seat. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment that we have been waiting for. The keynote speech from the Minister of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati. Ibu Sri Mulyani, the stage is yours.
Om Swastiastu, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to all of you. I don't have to mention all the guests here as well as the speaker because it's been repeated 3 times by the MC and then Pak Edwin and then Pak Reynaldi. So I would like to just greet everybody here, Pak Darmin and all colleagues. My dear colleague from both SMV, that is PT SMI, and all the colleagues from PT IIF. I also welcome from PLN Pertamina, who also attend here. My colleague from ADB, who's also arriving here, and also other speakers. First, I would like to welcome you all to Bali. This conference is actually a series of side events that we are designing together and jointly with Bank Indonesia to make sure that the road to the G20 Finance Minister and Central Bank Governor meeting, that this is the 3rd meeting under the Indonesia presidency, hopefully it's going to be also successful. There are so many side events that we design, and they are all very well aligned with the theme that the G20 is currently managing as well as promoting. That is how we are going to be able to recover together, recover stronger. It's a very ambitious and challenging theme given the situation and the dynamic that we are facing today. So I would like to express my appreciation to PT SMI and IIF who contributing to this side event leading to the G20 Finance and Central Bank Governors meetings. Let us now discuss about the theme today, which is a sustainable finance instrument and management in achieving sustainable development goal in Indonesia. Indonesia, just like many other countries in the world, has been suffered from pandemic. The COVID-19 since 2020 has contracting economy as well as creating a very serious momentum, damage of the momentum of growth and progress in many countries in the world. And this pandemic is not yet over. So we are still currently struggling to first, of course, making sure that this COVID-19 can be overcome, which is requiring still the vaccination. For some country is a booster, for other country, especially low-income country, they cannot even get the first shot on their vaccination. So the access of vaccination is going to be very important, and that's why within this pandemic, within this finance minister as well as central bank governors meeting, we are discussing one of the topic is the joint finance and health, which is the goals is to better prepare the world for the next pandemic. So the pandemic preparedness is one of the most important topic, in which we also establish one of the financial instrument, that is FIF, in order for the world to mobilize funding so that we will be able next time around when we are facing with another pandemic, because COVID is not going to be the one and the last one. And how we are going to be able to better prepare, better response, quick response, so that the damage as well as the casualty is not going to be as big as this COVID-19. Another issue, this pandemic is not only creating, of course, casualty on a human and humanitarian side, but also on economic and financial side. Many countries, in this case, introducing a lot of policy in order for them to be able to not only cope with the pandemic, but also to recover their economy. Indonesia is not an exception. Together with Bank Indonesia, fiscal policy and monetary policy, working closely also with the OJK in order for us to be able to design the counter-cyclical. And in this case, Indonesia is among few countries who can recover to the pre-pandemic output level or GDP level in 2021. A very quick recovery, which is, I think, we should be very thankful for that achievement. But the goals as well as the objective is not finished by actually achieving the pre-pandemic output level. We still need to continue address a lot of development issue which is captured in the SDG, and that's why in this case PTSMI, which is promoting continuously the sustainable development goals and how to achieve, is becoming commendable, and I appreciate that. One of the most important, which is also need to be put within the design of policy, is the climate change challenge. So the world is not only facing with pandemic, but we are also facing another catastrophic threat to the global economy, that is climate change. And that makes even more complicated with this geopolitical situation, which have, what you call it, a spillover effect, a damaging effect to the food and energy price globally. Pursuing and achieving the goals within the SDG related to climate change is going to be even more tougher with the geopolitical consequences or geopolitical spillover, which is related to the food and energy. Why? Because many of the menu and priority of activity within climate change agenda usually related to the two very most important contributors to the climate change. The first is energy, the second one is food or land use. So this is going to be a very complex, what you call it, environment for all of us. Within this G20, we continue discussing as well as finding a way for us to be able, as a group, but also in this case, working closely with many international organizations, multilateral institutions, in order for us to be able not only discussing, but addressing this issue of climate change in the most effective way. We are all understand that the world or countries always meet every year under what you call it UNFCCC to discuss about climate change and threat, commitment for all countries to contribute avoiding this threat, and how much does it cost for each country for this kind of commitment. Indonesia is also participating in all this meeting. Our commitment to also participating in addressing the climate change threat has been actually very strong track record. Indonesia, in fact, here in Bali, is the first to host the UNFCCC 13, and at the same time we initiate the first meeting between Finance Minister, Development Minister, and Environmental Minister. Before that, usually the talking about climate change is only attended and dominated by the environmentalists and environment agency or ministries. But finance never discussed. But since Bali, we actually initiated and putting the financial aspect within the context of climate change discussion and talk and even negotiation. Then it achieved what we call it the Paris Agreement within the UNFCCC, in which countries, they pledge their nationally determined contribution. For Indonesia, we pledge or we commit to reduce our CO2 emission by 29% with our own effort and resources, or we can upscale to 41% reduction of CO2 with international support. And this connotation regarding the need to scale up reduction of CO2 that can only be achieved if there is international support, and especially from the advanced country, is also reflected in the Paris Agreement. At that agreement, the advanced country pledge or commit to contribute 100 billion per year for countries, especially low income as well as emerging country, to be able to scale up their national determined contribution. This is still actually a homework which is not yet delivered. And that's why within the context of Indonesia as a host of this G20 presidency, we also put the sustainable finance as one of the most important topics that need to be discussed among finance ministers and central bank governors. Sustainable finance is not only discussing regarding the affordability of the climate change commitment, but also the aspect of just or equality. This is consistent with the UNFCCC principle of common but differentiated responsibility. For a country like Indonesia, which have huge tropical forests, Indonesia definitely will be scrutinized in terms of our management of tropical forests. For a country as big as Indonesia, who also still in the process of development and continue pushing poverty eradication by promoting growth and job creation, a country as the fourth largest population in the world will definitely require more and more electricity or power. So for Indonesia, the source of the CO2 emission coming from the power sector definitely is becoming one of the area that will be also scrutinized. But this is not only for Indonesia, so that orang Indonesia jangan baper gitu. Because all country will be also scrutinized. And then it's not only the low income or emerging country, but also other country will be scrutinized. United States, their commitment to the climate change. European, especially under the situation, geopolitical situation in which the access of energy becoming very, very challenging because of the war in Ukraine. Their commitment to the climate change definitely is going to be also scrutinized. So all countries will be scrutinized. For Indonesia, because we've already committed to the NDC, nationally determined contribution, the reputation and credibility of our country's commitment is definitely need to be continued, built, and safeguarded. So how we are going to achieve this very important commitment? It is not only that we just want to comply to please others, but because we commit this one, because we understand climate change is a threat for our own people. Climate change has been also creating a dire consequence to many of our own population. So it is actually serving our own development need. In order for us to be able to achieve the NDC, it will require financing. And it is not a small, trivial financing. I give you the size of it's been estimated in terms of how much it is required to achieve the NDC. If we are going to reduce the CO2 29%, the contribution of the power sector, electricity company especially, is going to be 314 million ton CO2 reduction. This is the largest, the second largest after forestry. If we want to scale up into 41% of reduction of CO2, then the power sector need to reduce CO2 by 446 million ton. That's huge. That's humongous. Really, 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 really big. And how much it costs for us to be able to reduce the CO2 emission for the electricity. So this is the case. Indonesia will continue growing. So our demand and the need for electricity is going to be even more increased. How come Indonesia will satisfy the increasing demand of electricity while at the same time reducing the CO2? That's the challenge. That is what is the simple statement, problem statement. This country will continue need electricity. When people growing now, the income per capita of Indonesia is already $4,350. We are in a middle income country, and if Indonesia continue growing with 5% and we becoming middle upper income country or advanced country, then the consumption per capita of the electricity will definitely increase. People who used to be only have one small house without air condition now have air condition. People who doesn't have the refrigerator now have the refrigerator. So each is going to be continue increase. But we commit to reduce the CO2 emission, especially from the electricity. So the question for the PLN, as the monopoly company state-owned, how you are going to produce more electricity with less CO2? That is actually the menu of the day. That is exactly what we are discussing very seriously, whether in a UNFCCC or in the forum like the G20. So how much it costs for us to continue increasing the production of electricity while reducing the CO2 emission by 314 million ton or 446 million ton CO2 from electricity? The cost is just staggering. It will require 243 billion US dollar for 29%. For 41% is 243 billion only for the electricity. Or if we are going to put in rupiah, karena I think the audience in this room cannot connect with 243 billion, you have no idea what number is that. So I will translate in rupiah, it's about 3.500 triliun. And I give you an idea, what does it mean, Ibu? APBN kita is around 3.000 triliun. So just to give you the context, 243 billion with the GDP of Indonesia, which is around 1.2 trillion US dollar. So this is a huge resources that need to be mobilized. So the discussion now is not about the commitment to reduce CO2, but in order for you to be able to deliver those commitments, you need money, you need technology, and you need the principle that is allowing these resources to be able to be mobilized. And that's why the discussion has been very a lot. And I'm glad that after this, you are going to have the panel which is going to discuss on all those more technical detail. But in principle, this will definitely not only coming from the government-owned money. The government have played a very important role, but not the one and the only resource for this kind of commitment. The role of private sector is very important. The role of international finance is very important. And that's why the question regarding how you can create a policy framework that allowing and attracting financing, which is not only coming from the government to be able to finance the CO2 reduction. Within the global context, that means that the carbon need to be priced. If you can always continue producing CO2 without any consequence and no price, then nobody have no incentive to reduce the CO2. When you put the price, then everybody suddenly realize that this is a bad pollution. And that's why the discussion regarding the carbon market, in which when you create a market for carbon, then the price can be quoted. For many players, especially business, this is a new opportunity. Indonesia is now preparing all the necessary regulatory framework and framework for this market for carbon can be introduced. The first experiment is for the PLN to start introducing cap and then trade of the carbon for their power generator among the IPP. When you have the price, then you actually then can introduce other instruments like the carbon tax. When you have that one, then you are going to be able to create a market for carbon, not only domestic, but also globally. When we are talking about the global carbon market, unfortunately, the price of carbon is not one universal price for all. And this is the serious debate within the finance ministers meeting. What is the fair price of carbon, which is reflecting this common but differentiated responsibility? You are talking about one commodity that is CO2, but differentiated price. So we can imagine how complex this mechanism and how effective this is going to be able to be implemented. But this is exactly one of the most core issue which is being discussed on the financing side. Another issue is how country can transition their energy production toward more renewable and green economy, green energy. And this is also one of the most important in which Ministry of Finance is preparing. Currently, 62% of the PLN energy consists of coal or batu bara. Definitely every consumption of the energy like what we are doing today in this room, you are actually contributing to the emission of CO2. Because this is produced, this electricity produced 62% by coal. So while you're enjoying a very pleasant room, you are actually polluting the world. Just to remind you about that. Now, the solution is not sacrificing those kind of the level of enjoyment that you have, but how we can produce the electricity which is cleaner and greener. And that is exactly how the ETM, energy transition mechanism, is going to be very important. The role of the two very most important state-owned enterprise, that is Pertamina and PLN, cannot be actually put aside. They are becoming the most important and maybe the one that can determine whether Indonesia can achieve this kind of commitment. This is not development commitment, this is actually humanitarian commitment. Whether these two institutions is becoming the champion of this green transformation. Now the Ministry of Finance is working very closely with other ministries, including the ASDM, state-owned enterprises, the coordinating ministers, because President Jokowi, within this G20, he wants to showcase Indonesia have the ability to transform our energy toward green energy. President Jokowi has already communicated in many international fora. It is our job to deliver that commitment. So we are now working very closely with the PT-PLN for the ETM, and I do hope Pertamina is also joined actively in designing. When you talk about green energy, Indonesia fortunate enough to have huge potential. You name it, hydro, geothermal, wind, solar, I think tidal. These are all which Indonesia have huge potential. So the challenge as well as the opportunity for us is to design the right policy. And that is exactly what we are now preparing together with others in order for us to be able to continue putting the instrument and the right policy. We use special mission vehicle like PTSMI to contribute. Pak Edwin mentioned earlier that he's very proud that PTSMI become the net zero company and the financing has already achieved 500 million. Just remember, the need for financing is 243 billion. So 500 juta itu belum apa-apa Pak Edwin, walaupun sudah bangga. That means that you have to do more. And it is not necessarily that you have to use all your own balance sheet by excessively leverage yourself, which is becoming unsustainable. You have to be able to create creative financing. IIF with PTSMI, we are assigned them to be able to continue innovate the financing by working together with multilateral institution, bilateral institution, philanthropic, they call it blended finance. And that's why PTSMI hosting what you call it the Sustainable Development Goals Blended Finance Indonesia 1. This is the blended finance which is created under the PTSMI former CEO Ibu Emma, which is ada di sini. I hope she still care about the green financing because she's already moved to Pertamina. So we want to mobilize all funding with the creative financing. Now the last part of my speech is about the ecosystem. This cannot be done by PLN, Pertamina, PTSMI, IIF, and Menteri Keuangan, Kementerian Keuangan, dan juga dengan others ministries. This can be done if all stakeholders will participate in this climate change goal. And that's why Indonesia also need to build, this is my last part, the ecosystem of the whole climate change financing. When you talk about the ecosystem, that means regulatory framework, one thing, including financial sector ability to mobilize green financing. And that means we need to have regulatory framework, enforcement, the integrity of the financing part, and that's why we work closely with the OJK, as well as Bank Indonesia, in order for us to be able to develop the right taxonomy for the climate financing. This is one of the agenda that will be discussed and is already being discussed in the ASEAN and will be continued discussed to find the right taxonomy, not only for each country, but for other countries, because carbon market have no boundary. When you pollute the CO2, this is belong to the whole world. When you reduce the CO2, you create benefit for the whole world. That is maybe the most difficult part. That's why the taxonomy need to be discussed at the regional or even global level. Next year, Indonesia is going to hold the chairmanship of the ASEAN, and within the ASEAN finance minister, we will also discuss about this taxonomy. So I think this is what we're trying to do. What I'm providing you today is that when Indonesia commit to reduce the CO2 to avoid the climate change threat or catastrophic consequences, Indonesia also working hard in a credible way to deliver those commitments. And working in a credible way is not an easy and simple task. It will require all parties to coordinate and collaborate within Indonesia and with other partners beyond Indonesia at the global level. Because the issue is so complex, the spirit of collaboration and cooperation is one of the most necessary ingredient for the success of the achievement. And I have to testify under the current geopolitical situation, the spirit of collaboration and coordination is a very, very challenging task. So with this side event, I do hope that we are going to be able to continue contribute to this kind of process, as well as maintaining and reminding all of us that climate change cannot go away by itself. It can only be avoided if we work together. Consistent with the G20 theme, if we work together, then we are going to be able to recover together, recover stronger. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Sri Mulyani, for the keynote speech, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, let's put our hands together for Ibu Sri Mulyani. You may return to your seat, Ibu, and please kindly remain on the stage as we are about to start our fireside chat session on mobilizing funds for the net-zero emission agenda of the country. And now I will hand over this session to our moderator, Ibu Andini. Now the stage is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. So let's begin the fireside chat. We want to set the tone for our later discussion. We'll be discussing how to mobilize funds to achieve Indonesia's net zero emission agenda. Ibu Sri Mulyani already articulated so well the critical sectors that needs to be addressed, and energy seems to be the priority. Ibu, maybe I should ask you the question. You mentioned a lot, you explained greatly about the need to transition about energy, and maybe you can share with us how to make the transformation more affordable, just, and fair.
Terima kasih Anili. I think I've already explained quite lengthy, but specifically when you mentioned about the transition that should be just and affordable, this is one of the most challenging tasks. When you talk about just and affordability in this case, then you really have to define more explicitly what does it mean to be just and affordable. Affordable for ours in this case is when you talk about the power sector, energy sector, when the energy will be transitioned toward more green energy, that means you have a very obvious challenge. How to reduce the non-renewable, especially coal, and how you will replace and build more renewable energy, right? So you really have to do that. You will continue having a demand, so how you are going to replace the non-renewable, especially coal, with the more renewable. And that's have the consequences, very serious consequences on the financing side. Retiring coal, it is not cost-free. It is actually expensive, because then it has a consequence for the PLN in terms of their cost of producing electricity. The question is that if this cost consequence immediately will increase, so the price of electricity becoming more expensive, right? So this test of affordability will be tested that if the price of electricity increase, can PLN just pass through the price to the customers? That is, people, industry have to consume electricity which is much expensive. Can they afford it? So that's the affordability. So can people and industry affordable to pay a higher electricity price? If they cannot, so who should subsidize? PLN have the ability to absorb this loss. So the second affordability is whether PLN have the strength, financial strength, to absorb the loss. Definitely will not. So who should pay the price? They will shift this loss to government. So the affordability, the third affordability is going to be, will the APBN, the budget, have the affordability to subsidize PLN so that we can transform from the non-renewable into renewable without damaging people, economy, business, PLN own financial situation, and also the government budget. So who should pay? That is exactly the affordability. Who should pay? And that's why within the context of the international negotiation, we always say this, what the international, especially advanced country, with this 100 billion commitment, how much we are going to use this 100 billion commitment to be able to transform this in an affordable way. And that's entering the second principle of just. Because the question about affordability is who should pay, how much we should pay to be able to be affordable. But if we say that, oh, we can only pay this much while the real price is this much, this is going to be like the subsidy. So who should pay this difference? That is going to be also at the international level, how much the advanced country with this 100 billion commitment, multilateral development institution, philanthropic who care about climate change, when they are saying that, well, Indonesia should not pollute, should not emit more CO2, okay, we will do that. Will you help us? And in this case, how you are going to help? Providing money, only advocacy, technical assistance, capacity building. There are so many things. So this is exactly what we are talking about on the ETN. And I do hope, if I explain too detail, I'm afraid the next speaker don't have material to present in this case. So I will stop here.
Thank you, Ibu. So let me give the opportunity to Pak Edwin then to maybe can share a bit about how the private sector can support through sustainable finance, both in funding and also in lending side.
Okay, thank you, Bu Andini. Let me put in the context first that we fully support the government in achieving nationally determined contribution target and net zero emission targets. And as it is mentioned by Ibu Menteri, that it requires huge investment to achieve that target, and APBN cannot stand alone, and it requires private participation in this context. Yeah. So PT SMI within its role try to, on the funding side, we try to diversify our funding source in such way we can be closer to that funding source. Yeah. The most simple way, we start issuing green bond, yeah, which is precisely correct, yeah, and indirectly we can access to the green bond investors, and moreover we can also diversify our funding source to have an access to not only investors but also philanthropy donor to get many more support. Not only money, but also technical assistance, capacity building, and something like that. Yeah, that one is on the funding side. On the financing side, I think the most important thing is that we continue to innovate our product of financing. We introduce like partial credit guarantee to support green projects, and we do also more upstream in preparing green project as well as climate link projects. Yeah, and it requires additional support. So at the end of the day, I think we collaborate with many partners and donors to be able to bring this transition. Yeah, transition. Whether it is on the investment side, more smooth and less costly. So I think that two parts, yeah, funding and financing and investment, I think is becoming our role, yeah, as a public development institution, and the upcoming event that we are enthusiastically welcoming is the appointment of us as a manager in the country transition, as mentioned by Ibu Menteri. I think that one is becoming our mainstream of financing investment in the future.
Thank you. And Pak Ray, how can we provide solution on climate change impact mitigation, not only that is commercially viable, but also social and environmentally responsible?
Okay, thank you for the question, Andini. Allow me to be a bit technical on this. So when we see a project that we need to finance on a sustainable way, aside from the basic due diligence that we do, which is financial due diligence, technical due diligence, legal due diligence, we do what we call a social environmental due diligence. With this social environmental due diligence, we can analyze a gap on the projects that we will be financing. What kind of gaps between their existing condition and to be able to fill in the requirement of the social and environmental aspect. And with that, we come up with what we call a CAP, a corrective action plan for the project to be implemented in a sustainable way. And with this corrective action plan, we expect that the project will implement it and it is monitored towards the life of the project. But having said this, hopefully this will not scare projects owner that they need to have everything upfront in regard of the social environmental. It is something that can be achieved in a certain time frame, in a certain strategy. So we do believe that the social and environmental aspect can be implemented if there is a will from the business owner, the project, that this aspect can be mitigated. Hopefully that will answer your question, Andini. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pare. Before I conclude the fireside chat, maybe I'll go back to Ibu Sri Mulyani, because you mentioned one thing that is very crucial in this time around, which is the international negotiation. You mentioned about the geopolitical situation and how it has shifted what's going on in the developed countries in terms of energy needs. Do we have, Indonesia, do we have a bargaining position, Ibu, that probably we can use as an opportunity in order to smooth our energy transition with the current needs of the European countries, perhaps, or even the America? They seem to be the champion of energy transition, but since they're having this crisis, their needs seems to have shifted a bit. Do we have that positioning or opportunities that we can use?
Thank you, Anin. I think the first, what we need to decide is what the Indonesia own goal. What do we really want? In first, recognizing that this is global issue. When you're talking about the global issue or global problem, in economics we call it actually global public goods, right? When you are dealing with the public goods, the phenomena in economic is actually the price is not reflecting the right level, and many people can become a free rider. And that's why the phenomena of public good cannot be addressed only through market. Now, within the context of climate change, each country can have their own motivation to become a free rider. I don't want to do it. If I'm doing while others is not doing it, why should I do it? And if each country have those exactly attitude, then the world is heading to this catastrophic climate change. Because no one want to pay or participate unless everyone to participate. The free rider is very, very challenging phenomena or task for the climate change. Now for Indonesia, I think our attitude is already mentioned earlier. Our country has been founded by our founding father, that this country, even at that time when Indonesia declaring our independence in 1945, we were broke, we were poor, but para pendiri bangsa kita, our founding fathers, saying that Indonesia should and would become a country who will participate actively in the international in order for us to maintain the peace order, ya, ikut dalam melaksanakan perdamaian dunia, keadilan sosial, perdamaian abadi dan keadilan sosial. If the world is going to be in a catastrophic situation, perdamaian abadi dan keadilan sosial nggak akan pernah tercapai. So Indonesia own goals to become a country who will participate in maintaining a world order which is based on freedom, justice, and peace. That means we have to translate our own commitment to our own policy. Now, you are talking about negotiation. The way we always presented Indonesia, we are not in the position to be dictated by other, and we are not in a position to then can be forced to do something unless there is all the necessary and sufficient condition. Let's say, I will give you the example, the NDC, National Determined Contribution. Indonesia own Ministry of Environment with ALT is already saying that 29% reduction, 41% reduction. We estimate the cost. And then after we estimate cost, we say that this is what we can afford. This is how much coming from the budget, government budget, from the private sector, domestic and others. Then we say that this is the financing gap. So we are telling the global, if you want us to deliver, this gap need to be filled. So who will pay? So before you asking Indonesia to deliver, are you going to pay or not? If it is not going to pay, then we can always talk forever. Because we can always answer every time you ask. But this is not about question and answer. This is about deliverable. That's why Rinaldi and Pak Edwin is going to talk about one project, the cost is this much, from technical point of view is this, from financial point of view is this, ESG, environmental, sustainable and governance principle is like this. Who will participate to this cost? So we will do all level of negotiation. It's not just the rhetoric, we translate it into a real policy framework, we translate it into even more detail, project level, so that everyone at the national level, European, Japan, United States, or other country, you can choose. You want to talk, we can talk. You want to discuss policy, we can discuss policy. You want to financing, we will need this kind of thing. I think that is the most important strategy, so that other country will see that this Indonesia is a no-nonsense country. Because we can become a nonsense country, we're just talking and talking. But this, if we want to Indonesia to become a no-nonsense country, then you can always translate the rhetoric into policy framework, regulatory, project level, deliverable, accountability. That is exactly what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu. With that, I conclude the fireside chat. Ibu Sri Mulyani, Pak Edwin, Pak Ray, thank you very much. And I will return the floor back to Andrea.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's put our hands together for the fireside chat session. And before we end this session, let's have a photo opportunity. Let's capture this moment once again with a photo session. Maybe we can make two poses, yeah? First without mask and the second with mask. Okay. And now with your mask on, please, one more time. Okay. So this time, give your best smiles or smile with your eyes. All right. Okay. All right, round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much once again. Ibu Sri Mulyani, Bapak Edwin, and also Bapak Rinaldi. Thank you, Ibu Sri Mulyani. We understand that you have a tight schedule and we really appreciate your presence for this event. Now, please kindly join the media session at the foyer, accompanied by the CEO of PT SMI and PT.
iya, tadi udah saya.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform you that our next discussion will start in a few minutes. We would like to invite everyone to kindly return to the ballroom and take your seat. Thank you.
handphone yang kecil. dia itu kan punya ada beberapa syarikat, gue megang syarikat tengah gitu. Yang sebelumnya yang Tapi kalau dia udah ngomong jadinya jadi ganggu. Iya, keren. Tapi kan lebih bersih yang satu lagi ya?
Oke, nomor 9.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again we would like to invite everyone to kindly return to the ballroom and please be seated as we're about to continue our program in a few minutes. Thank you. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin, kami persilakan untuk segera kembali ke ballroom dan kami persilakan untuk berkenan menempati tempat duduk Anda karena kita harus segera melanjutkan ke acara berikutnya. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue our program shortly. Please kindly return to the ballroom and please be seated. Hadirin, kami akan segera melanjutkan ke agenda berikutnya. Kami persilakan untuk segera memasuki ballroom dan menempati tempat duduk Anda. Terima kasih.
Selamat siang. Hi. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite the speakers who will be participating for today's session. Yang pertama ada Bapak Wito Tantra, Director of PT Indonesia Infrastructure Finance. Pak Wito, you may join me on the stage. Please give a round of applause. And then we have Pak Enrico Haryanto, Group Head of Integrated Financial Services Sector Policy from Indonesia Financial Service Authority atau OJK. Silakan Pak Enrico bergabung. Next we have Ibu Mashita Kristalin, Special Advisor to the Minister of Finance on Macroeconomic and Fiscal Policy from the Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia. Mashita, selamat bergabung. And then we have Majiro Tominaga, Country Director Indonesia from Asian Development Bank. Majiro, you may join us on stage. We also have Mr. Pradana Murti, Director of PT Sarana Multi Infrastruktur. Please give a round of applause for Pak Pradana and Pak Jiro. And also joining us virtually, Ms. Zalina Shamsuddin, Head of International Program Asia Pacific for Climate Bonds Initiative, which are already here with us virtually. Ibu Zalina? Ms. Zalina, are you here with us? Ms. Zalina is joining us from London. Please give me an okay if Ms. Zalina is here. For online participants, you can also participate the discussion by providing your question to our chat box. Please state your name and your affiliation and to who that you like to address your question to. And we will try to include your questions throughout the discussion. We'll be talking about the role of financial institution. First of all, we want to stress on the role of financial institution to achieve sustainable finance. And we have Pak Enrico here from OJK and also Ibu Mashita. I would like to stress to both of you before we discuss further regarding this issue. Maybe Pak Enrico, we heard from Ibu Sri Mulyani, the commitments and also the plans that we have to achieve net zero emission target. Maybe you can also mention from OJK point of view, like what has been done and what is that we're currently plan ahead.
Okay, thank you Andini and also PTSMI and PTIIF for having me here. Actually, the support from OJK as a financial regulator and supervisor to support the sustainable finance initiative is already getting back more than a decade. We already launched the first roadmap of sustainable finance for 5 years, 2015 to 2019. And if you may aware that in that particular period of the first roadmap, we have highlighted specific regulation supporting the sustainable finance. It is POJK number 51 and 60. 51 specifically addressing and required all the financial institutions under OJK supervision, including issuers and public listed companies in capital market to submit yearly sustainability report. And also for financial institutions, they also have to submit their own action plan to support the sustainable finance. Yeah. The second one is the POJK number 60. It's also 2017. We support and give some incentive to issue the green bond, green instrument. After that, after a bit delay by the pandemic, we released the second phase of roadmap, of sustainability finance roadmap, 2021 to 2025. Different with the first roadmap, which we will emphasizing on putting awareness and commitment from the industry. In the second roadmap, we push towards the more financing, just like Ibu Menteri said that private sector also have to support the big agenda on the net zero emission and also sustainable finance. So in the second roadmap, we also have some, I think the two initiatives. First is that we gather all the industries. We have a specific task force on sustainable finance comprising of all the leading representatives from the industry. And also we start, I think, quite a period of time after the World Bank released the guidelines to establish the so-called green taxonomy. So OJK have initiated that effort it is a collaborative and coordinated effort with the 8 ministries. We, in a quite continuous and marathon effort during last year, we have finalizing the so-called Indonesia Green Taxonomy, which already released early this year in January by Bapak Presiden himself. And hopefully this green taxonomy, just also like Ibu Menteri said, it will be giving more details, guidelines to differentiate different sector. So in the future, if every particular parties want to support the initiative on sustainable finance, the incentive or disincentive could be built up upon this green taxonomy as a baseline. I think I stop there. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, I would like to go to Ibu Mashita. Perhaps we want to talk more about how the support from the Indonesian government for private sector, in particular, how they can be innovative through sustainable financial scheme. How can make it more lucrative, I guess, for the private sector, Ibu?
Thank you, Mbak Adini. So Bu Menteri has mentioned, right, in order to achieve the NDC and also the net zero target of Indonesia, not only Indonesia, we see that there's a huge financing gap. And then we have to fill in this financing gap, right? To be able to be more scalable, the project needs to be viable in terms of financial so that private sectors can come in and invest as well. So what is the role of government? If we think about the role of government, there's no government in the world that can afford 100% of the cost of the transition. So the role of the government will be a catalytic financing. So the project that is not bankable, the public goods issues that Ibu Menteri mentioning, and then you created a financial instrument that help the financial viability of the project, and then the project can tap into the private sector's pool. So that is the role of the government now. What we're doing currently, for example, the biggest two sectors on the CO2 reduction emission is the forestry and also energy and transportation. Yeah, the cost for forestry is less than 100 trillion to achieve the NDC target, and the cost for energy is 3,500 trillion. So it's many times the cost of the forestry with more or less the same target of CO2 reduction emission. So what we're doing now, for example, in the energy side, we created this country platform where this financing from private and also from philanthropy can come in, and the government provide in the middle fiscal incentive to make the project viable, and so that it can be scalable, private sectors can come in, etc. Because if we're thinking only about direct investment by government, there's no way any project can be scalable.
So let's hear from the international point of view then. We have Ms. Zalina, who's here with us from London. Ms. Zalina, maybe you can share a bit like what are the capital market instruments that is available right now to support the net zero emission target, and also how the market respond for the issuance of bonds. What are the challenges and incentives for this?
Hi. Thank you so much for having.
I guess your audio is still on mute. Okay, you're good. You're good.
I'm good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, given the excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone. Given the context of the amount of funding that needs to be raised, the most viable capital market instrument at the moment that Indonesia can leverage on would be the bond of the Sukuk instrument, which has historically been the most successful financing instrument from the capital market side to sort of help in the transformation or transition of energy generation. We find in certain markets, of course, given the level of uncertainty over the technology, there have been room for private equity investments to be undertaken given the higher risk involved, but predominantly it's the bond or Sukuk market that we've seen that's been leveraged for this. In terms of the challenges, I think one of the primary challenges is how credible is the transition, right? So investors are looking for green projects, are looking for transition projects with the aim of meeting 1.5 degree ambitions, with the aim of reducing carbon emissions. However, sometimes it is hard to see from the quality of the project, whether it's meeting those aims, and that is why CBI has always proposed a science-based pathway, which clearly identifies how certain activities that are aimed to reduce carbon emissions actually directly link to the national contribution of GHG emissions. So I think that is one of the primary challenges of a bond issuance in terms of trying to for the issuer to prove and to share the right kind of information in terms of how effective and how will they meet their targets. I think that's one of the challenges. In terms of incentives, I think, as mentioned, some of these projects involve new technologies, involve new risk, which is something that not only do investors not understand, but intermediaries also have. It's a huge steep learning curve, and so although financing energy through bond market has been around since as long as 9 years, there's still a gap in terms of understanding, and I think we're overcoming it through conversations like this that we're undertaking, where people understand that financing is available. The technology is available. What we need to do is commit to it and communicate effectively. In terms of incentives, we've seen in the more successful markets, yes, there is a need for incentives. It could be in the form of financial incentives or non-financial incentives. We find that if there is a clear policy in terms of what are the energy transition plans in place, followed by clear regulatory frameworks, which OJK have clearly identified that there is there. That's the regulatory foundation that signals investors and intermediaries and issuers in which direction to go. So that is critical in itself. And of course, there are other incentives to sort of reduce the interest costs. Blended financing is a huge incentive as it reduces the total financial burden. So these are some of the areas that one could look at to mobilize the kind of financing that is needed today.
Very well. Let's move on to PT SME. Mas Pradana, maybe you can share a bit what are the lessons learned from your first green bond?
Thank you, Ms. Andini. I think we can share that SMI first issued our green bond back in 2018 in the amount of still very small, 500 billion IDR. It was at that time intended to test the market, the regulations, that because we know that this is a potential instrument that we can exploit. Yeah. But we aren't really sure there's enough incentives for both issuers and investors to actually use this kind of instruments to push the green economy or green financing. Now, we try to adopt to regulatory requirements, which is the OJK requirements, but also in the effort to instill best practice, we applied the Asian Green Bond Standards as well as the Green Bond Principles, and trying to increase the credibility of our green bond issuance. Now, that was well accepted by the market, yeah. Because of that effort, because we also have this independent reviewer from Cicero, so that's really credible, and the market accepted. But the pricing is not. We don't see any difference. The pricing, the green bond with the conventional bonds, after we tried it. That also includes the additional effort and additional costs for PT-SME to issue the green bond, because we have to engage external supporting professional institutions, yeah, like Cicero, yeah. But the pricing is pretty much the same with conventional. So the lesson learned, I think, that's the market needs to be deepened more, and to be more incentive for investor to trying to subscribe to green bonds. And then from the regulatory point of view, we can applaud OJK. They also trying to do something about putting more incentive to issuers, like they introduce this regulatory cost discount for the next green bond issuance. Yeah. So I think that's that is going on the right track, but it's different when we're talking about global green bond issuance. Yeah. Global green bond issuance, we are talking about more investors that are having enough incentive internally as well as from their own regulators to actually try to move to sustainable finance. But locally, I think we need to develop more, and because the carbon market framework is still under development, still we are waiting for that to be established, and I think we will see more green bond issuance later. Thank you.
I'm going to circle back to you, Mas Pradana, regarding this. How can we develop more, I guess, from what you're already doing? But I would like to hear from Pak Winto. Pak Winto, maybe you can also share from IIF's sustainability bond. What are the lessons learned from that?
Thank you, Mbak Andini. IIF issues its sustainable bond last year, January 2021, to be precise. And the proceed of this was or will be used for financing of green or or environmentally driven projects, as well as social. That's what differentiates between, let's say, green bond and sustainable bond, because, as you know, we are oversighting both compliance on the environmental aspect as well as the social aspect by nature of our DNA, which is we have the IFC and ADB as our shareholders. And this is something that we have done in the last 10 years. So for us, moving to issue green bond was not, it was more like a natural progression, and the market actually it's something that has gained a lot of momentum, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 years. The issuance itself was well received. We got very good pricing on that. Perhaps and we were the first sustainable finance development finance bond that are sustainable for non-bank financial institutions in Indonesia. It was well received, but I think I would have to agree with Pak Pradana that the pricing differential wasn't really there. And to me, you know, the few or the contributor to that, what actually, you know, drive that, is perhaps the, you know, lack of differentiation, I would say, between the practitioner of ESG. You know, for example, when we're talking about green, there are, you know, certain companies or intermediate companies like us who are, you know, more greener than the others. So different shades of green. In order for the market to actually gain that appreciation, is actually for them to make differentiation between, you know, companies. What exactly that went through, you know, to make sure, to evidence that they are green. What is it that they have done to evidence that they are, you know, the project is actually address some of the social issues. So I think, you know, this is a process, and IIF has been doing this for the last 10 years, and our process is pretty much integrated. You know, the ESG process is pretty much integrated into the business process. So it's, for us, it's, you know, doing an assessment or due diligence in the front, and then carrying that, you know, take that through the facility agreement, make sure that it's a legal obligation on the obligor to achieve certain standards. And also, this is something that is monitored until the whole payments is fully repaid. So this is what I think, which, you know, we have a very high, or we're following the international best practice on that. But the ability or the international market has not captured that, in my view. If they are able to capture that, I think the pricing would even be lower. So that's my wish. Thank you.
Noted. Let's talk about that later. But I will go to Pak Jiro. Pak Jiro, perhaps you can share from ADB point of view, how is ADB escalate sustainable finance in Indonesia, and also the approaches that you have made and the plans that you have to achieve it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this discussion. That's very important. I think from the ADB perspective, there are several areas that we are kind of supporting. One is at the level of, you know, sustainable financing, fundraising issues, in a sense that putting together working with the authorities in Indonesia to put together the policy framework and regulatory framework, so that, you know, blue bond, green bond, the issuance of these things can get easier for any institution to do. That's first point. Second is about the technical assistance, I think, in terms of for particular project or activities to attract financing from public and private sources. We help the sort of project owners sort of structure the project in a way that would invite crowd-in financing from, and I'm talking about the project in a sustainable sort of area. And third point is, of course, financing. We have a little bit of more concessional, it's not that very concessional, but a little bit more concessional sort of financing than from the private sector financing. So we can, by us providing financing to the project, that would make the sort of financing cost of the project a little bit cheaper, so that would make the sustainable project bankable. So that's important. And fourthly, I think an important part also is that project by project, we work with the project implementing agencies to make sure that the environment and, for example, the social impact of the investment that is being made are mitigated, and the impact being, you know, the particularly irrevocable sort of negative impact to be avoided. So that's in the area of environmental and social safeguards issue. we work with the project owners to make sure that the project design does not have a significant negative impact for the environment and social. So probably those 4 areas that we work on.
Very well. So let's talk about, like, we're already addressing what is currently has been working on and how to achieve that, also the challenges ahead. So I would like to welcome all the speakers. Let's have a discussion. Okay, how to make like the private sector and international institution can work together in order for us, Indonesia, to achieve our net zero emission. So SME and IIF already have, IIF, yes, I'm looking at you because you're the nearest one for me. Already have projects or bonds in order to achieve that. But so how can we work together better, I guess, to make it more efficient and more sustainable to achieve our targets? Maybe from OJK or Ibu Mashita, you can share a bit, like we've already done a lot here. What can we do more, I guess? What are the international institutions perhaps can contribute more, or from anywhere from the international market? How can we do it better, I guess? Silakan.
I guess to convince the international market and also private sectors, it's important for us to create the policy and regulatory framework for the green project to happen. Yeah, I would like to echo IIF and also PT SMI on the greenmium, the lack of greenmium of green bonds is not only for corporate or SOE, but also we have sovereign green bonds, and we don't actually feel the premium for having a green bonds. Yeah. So I think when we set up the governance of the project and also policy framework instrument all in place, then we can start offering or selling the idea into the global community. I can tell you a little bit example of our energy transition mechanism. We have launched this program along with ADB. ADB have program for several other countries in Asia on top of Indonesia. We have a project in order to lower the proportion of the brown energy and increase the proportion of the green energy, right? To be able to do this, of course, you have to think about the policy environment, which is the energy reform sector. For example, Indonesia electricity sectors has an oversupply of almost 40%. So if you're thinking of building the renewable energy side without lowering the excess supply on this side, then you'll have even more excess capacity. And in excess capacity of the electricity, you will have additional fiscal costs through subsidy and compensation, right? So the cost of electricity will be even more higher, both in terms of the government, especially the government, because we're subsidizing, it doesn't go directly to the consumer level, the increase of the price. So that environment we need to take into account. We don't just do the transition just like that, right? And number two is that the affordability side is that we have to make sure that PLN itself can do it financially, the government can do it financially, and once we package the whole process, including you think about the carbon reduction which can be sold outside, yeah, you can monetize the carbon reduction in the international market as well. Once you have that, then international organizations such as the MDBs, ADB, World Bank, and others can collaborate with us in creating this green financing ecosystem. So you cannot work alone in this. It needs ecosystem, it needs policy, it needs instrument, and also regulatory. So when everything, all the players and all the needed policy are in place, I think at least from this one project, we're very quite optimistic that it will be doable and hopefully it can be scalable.
Echo what Mr. Sri Mulyani mentioned, how to create that in ecosystem, kan Pak. Pak Enrico, silakan.
Okay, maybe echoing what just Ibu Masita said that, and also echoing Ibu Menteri, that from regulatory point of view, we in OJK, we are actively monitor, we are closely monitor and actively involved in what is going on in the development in the standard setting bodies. So the community of global regulators, whether it's a Basel Committee for bank or IAIS for insurance and also IOSCO for securities company, these all standard setting bodies, they all agree that we have to tackle carefully the so-called climate-related financial risks. They all agreed with that, and also the industry globally agreed with that. But how to calculate that? Yeah, because you know that all the risks facing by the financial institutions should be calculated and to the most reflected in the capacity to absorb loss, something like that. Yeah. So now we are still waiting for that because the convergence process is still going on. But of course we cannot wait for that. So on the other side, the issue from this convergence effort is that the data available to support the assessment of the risk management to carefully assess the climate-related financial risk is not there. So every country now building up the data availability and also the consistency and the standard around that. So that's why taxonomy also coming into place everywhere. And the other one is that if I come back to the financing, yeah, the financing needed to support the huge need of investment to support the green projects. So the availability of the instruments and also the design of the scheme. So we are no more in the term or in the structure of the traditional way, like bilateral financing between banks and the project or the debtors. We need the so-called creative financing. So, like Ibu Menteri said, we have now so many platforms to support the blended finance, like the ones sustainable one supported or hosted by the PTSMI and other similar scheme. We are in Indonesia very much support that, because otherwise, if we do the old-fashioned way, the risk level, risk tolerance, risk acceptance by the financial institution is not there. So everybody have to chip in to also coming into the scheme. So the risk level in the scheme could be reduced, and every participant, every parties in that scheme will share the risk accordingly to make the project feasible for everyone. Thanks.
So we do need to create like a creative financing solution, I guess, in order to achieve this. Maybe Ms. Zalina, you want to comment on that? How can we create this creative collaboration to achieve this?
Thank you. I'd like to comment on the pricing or lack of pricing gap before I go into my answer. I think based on our experience, what we've seen is pricing gap only arises with time. But what a bond issuance or green bond issuance or sukuk issuance does, it signals the investor community the commitment of the country or the companies to sustainability. And as a signaling factor, it is quite a significant, has quite a significant impact. Number one. Number two is, based on our engagements with investors in Europe, what we've found is during this COVID crisis, a lot of bond issuances that should have gone ahead didn't go ahead, but all the planned sustainable bond issuances did go ahead, which means there is a demand. So the supply should what is lacking now is the supply. In terms of, in my opinion, what needs to be done to sort of galvanize the industry is both, as rightfully mentioned, once we've set up the regulatory framework, once we've set up all the ecosystem to enable these projects, it needs to be a tactical approach in terms of leveraging the investor side and the issuer side. From the investor side, I think what is important is to look at how the domestic financial sector has transitioned to embrace sustainable finance. And for them not only while they're taking into account the transition risk and physical risk, to recognize that this projects are actually an opportunity for long-term sustainability for a financial institution, and it's a financing opportunity, and it's an ability to make more money as well. So I think we shouldn't only look at it from a risk point of view, but we should also look at it from a point of view that all economies need to transition, and the first movers in the financial sector will leverage on this shift, and they will benefit from that. So I think not only do we communicate to the international investors, you need to mobilize the domestic investors as well. From an issuer point of view, I think it is scale that is needed at the moment, and as rightfully mentioned by fellow panelists, I think more creative financial instruments and support through different innovative financing mechanisms is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Pajero, you can also add on to that. How can we work together to create a more creative solution for this?
Well, I think the technicality of how we create our system, I think we have discussed quite a lot today. I think there's an expert here, but rather, I will defer to the experts on this issue. But I think today, Ibu Sri Mulyani mentioned this very kind of easy way that this is the area where free rider is prone to happen. And then how are we going to prevent that, and then also incentivizing people anywhere, public sector, private sector, everybody is in the game. So to kind of incentivize them to participate and contribute. I think the mechanism to develop that incentive is very important, and then for that, I think, to me, one of the important part of that is the pricing, internalizing the price of carbon or any other sort of public bad, so that it can be costed and it becomes part of the sort of the economic thinking of participants in this community. So I think, yes, let me end that. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe from SMI or IIF, you want to add on to this, Pak Pradana or Pak, you can also jump in.
Okay, let me go first, Pak Wito. I think the key word here will be collaborative financing or blended financing, whatever terms we want to use. And the energy transition consists of two folds: the renewable energy investment as well as the coal phasing out. Now, we have a lot of solid foundations already, particularly on the renewable energy side. We have SDG Indonesia 1 blended finance platform. And one examples of the vast facility that we managed to leverage is like what ADB has provided, the green finance facility in the amount of $150 million, and a lot other facilities that we have gathered on the renewable energy side. The risking facility is also important. We have like investment premium from IFD and also investment grant from Mentari program. There's a lot of things like that that will increase the feasibility and bankability of the project that's going to be needed. And now we're talking about the energy transition counter platform, whereby the issue is not just only renewable energy, but also the coal phasing out. There's not a lot of funding out there that's willing to put their money in the investment of coal, including if that investment is to retire coal fire power plants. So we need to be more creative, Like, for example, just talking to our colleagues in DBS, talking about sustainability-linked bond or loan, I think all types of instruments that can still potentially be channeled to coal phasing out programs, but at the same time will achieve greenhouse gas emission reductions as well as what the renewable energy investment will do. And also we will try to do more on the green bonds, perhaps next year, given the economic condition is right. Maybe SMI will also issue a global green bond or a global sustainability linked bond we will try to see whatever modalities that's appropriate at the time. I think we need to collaborate and be creative. Yeah. Thank you.
Wita, silakan.
Thank you, Bu. The other day, I was talking to a colleague of mine who works for a major local banks. I will not name the name, but basically, I asked where is the institutions with regard to ESG compliant, and he said that two things. One is, as far as the client are concerned, they're focusing more on or try to avoid sectors that contribute a lot to the problem with sustainable finance. And the other one is a lot of things that going internally within the company, like saving electricity, papers and whatnot. So that's pretty much the definition of where they are today on compliance on this. So if I can go back to what I said earlier about the spectrum of green being, the different shades of green, different shades of compliance on social issues, we are more on the left side. Yes, there are statement of intent of complying to this, but actually what the country needs to go into or heading, or at least attempt to head, is the global best practices. I know it will be a process. Let's be realistic on that. I'm not expecting that today we become all of a sudden adopting and implementing all the international standards, but we have to move that way. The question is earlier about how can we actually help that. I think IIF, as I said earlier, has engaged on this for many years. That is the reason for establishment to as a financial intermediary to pass on the gospel around this sustainable financing, and we have a framework for that. It's basically I think what will come into surprise to a lot of people is the complexity of this framework. Not to be send a wrong message that this is daunting and not achievable. It is achievable, but it will require senior management commitment. It will require resources. It will require people. So they need to realize that. So what we can do is actually share our experience, with regard to the framework. Just to talk about the framework a bit. It is something that needs to be fully integrated to the whole process. And we are more than happy for IF to share its experience and provide assistance if needed for the Indonesian banking system or clients. So for us, we apply this principle to every single of our projects. So projects are, needs to go through a extensive diligence on environmental issues, as simple things like green energies, pollution abatement, those kind of things, to social issues that is also very important to us. Things like making sure that the indigenous people, for example, is looked after when we are sponsoring or financing a project, to make sure that cultural heritage are looked after, when that's being impacted or triggered as an issue when we look at a project, to look at land acquisitions and livelihood restoration. That's something that also that we look at very closely. So it's a population of things that we look at, and as I said, more than happy to share this with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. So I move on to, we have questions now. We have one question from Rahma PT Jasa Marga. This question is for PT SME, but I think I can also ask for a macro point of view from the other speakers. I would like to ask how the green bond can be implemented in toll road infrastructure that has characteristics, have long concession about 50 years, and is it possible the funding sources choice could be from green bond?
I think in the ideal world, one of the logical instruments is project bond. Yeah. However, it needs certain steps and maturity for Indonesian assets to be able to issue bonds, including the regulatory framework. Yeah. Tied into the project asset. Yeah. For green bond itself, with the mismatch in maturity or the tenor, I think we'll have the issue of the needs for gap financing. Yeah. So I think that's going to be one of the risks to mitigate. And with the underlying asset itself, I think the message is the greener the assets is, the more credible the green bond will be. So that's another issue to be discussed, including from independent reviewer. Yeah. But I think we ourselves will certainly be interested in looking at the sustainability linked bond, which is not going to be tied into assets, but a certain KPI that can be implemented for the bond investors. Yeah. I think that's trying to answer the question.
Very well. So do we have more questions from the audience? We still have one more. Okay, we still have one more. We're running a bit behind with time. I hope you don't mind. After this, I promise you we'll have lunch. So we will finish it strongly with question from the audience, because we do have a lot of participants outside the venue. But so I would like to ask your opinion though, to all this. Oh, okay. Now we have the another question to IIF. How do you ensure the ESG implementation are in place in the projects you finance? Oh, this is the question from one of the audience here, Pak. Silakan.
Okay, thank you. That's very good questions. We look at, when we look at ESG, we look at as a risk issues. So we incorporate that as part of the business process, but also with our risk management. And so when we look at projects, the first thing first is actually to analyze the project, what is called the social environmental due diligence. We are testing that against our standards. Our standard is based on the IFC performance standard. So we test that. After we test, then we identify the issues and we assess the risk, whether it's something, the extent of the level of risk. And then if that risk is it's something that need to be reduced, then we need to mitigate that. How do we mitigate that? We are issuing what is called the corrective action plan. And that corrective action plan is something that is discussed extensively with the client, making sure they are achievable with the time frame being established. And we input that into the legal obligations of the clients. So this corrective action plan is actually part of the facility agreement. So this is what differentiates what we do. And then they are being monitored. So after the money, okay, assuming everyone is agreed, then we let go or disperse the money. And then that's where the monitoring aspect kicks in. This monitoring aspect would involve us actually going through the project, assessing any challenges that they are facing. We are working with the client, making sure that the objective or the corrective action plan can be addressed in a satisfactory manner. Of course, for example, the pandemic itself established a bit of setback because not so much on the funding issues, but more of the fact that maybe some items has some supply issues or supply chain issues that take longer than the normal. So these are some of the challenges we face during pandemic. But all in all, I think we are quite happy with the performance of at the project level. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question to all. So as Ibu Sri Mulyani mentioned earlier, that we need to build an ecosystem for climate change financing. So we already have the framework and we have the plans, we have the practitioners on the ground to do it. And we know how to collaborate, partner up better for not only domestically, but also in international level. I guess I would like to ask from each one of you how to make it work now, because we do want to recover together and recover stronger. From Ibu Zalina, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to take the opportunity to also answer the question on the toll roads. I'm not sure whether many people know that CBI is a standard setter. We are an international standard setter. And at the moment, toll roads do not qualify as green. It is public transportation that qualifies as green, because toll roads do not actually in the end impact total GHG emissions. On that note, going back to the main question, I think, as you said, the players are all in place, the regulatory framework is in place. I think what we need to do is we need to sort of share more information. I think there's still a lack of technical expertise. There's a lack of knowledge and understanding, and that's how we can move this forward by getting all the players on the same page. I think if you look at financial institutions generally, domestically and internationally and regionally, the level of recognition that ESG is important, recognition that sustainable financing is important, but whether it's been put in place and it's part of the evaluation criteria and the risk criteria when evaluating financing or investments, there's still a gap. And I think we need to work with the financial sector to shift in that direction while working with investors as well to push that agenda. And of course, issuers need to know how to issue green bonds, what is the best way to do it, and how to reach out to the right investors. So I think, in my opinion, we need more capacity development and sharing of best practices amongst players across the three segments.
Of this session, particularly rich, but I think yes, I think we have financing is probably available, and we do think that some different sort of mechanism. We have ideas. We are imaginative enough to come up with different innovative schemes. I think one point is definitely the commitment at the different level for us to work together and converging around this common goal of reducing carbon and then making sure that our investments are all sustainable. I think it is the issue of collective action. We do need to work together and then share knowledge, and then this is a good thing for us to do. And for coming back again about the incentive side, I do think that some regulatory issue is there in terms of this is something that they need to do in order for them to operate. I mean, they're building the framework and policy framework for that. And at the same time, as also again, Ibu Sri Mulyani mentioned about carbon pricing, carbon trading, and different mechanism on that to internalize the cost and benefit of achieving a sustainable future. Is going to help us come to a collective action towards to achieve this goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Pradana.
I think just like to follow up of what Ibu Menteri has spoken about. Parallel discussions needs to happen at all levels. At the policy levels, also at the working levels on projects. But to follow up from that, we have to be able to optimize each of our own roles. Yeah, like for example, from the project owner perspective, or from the local intermediary institutions like us perspective, I think what we need to do is to try to increase the credibility of the assets, from the feasibility and bankability as well as from the ESG point of view. So that's what we need to do locally. From the other side, from the international supporters, financiers, philanthropists, investors and lenders, I think they also need to speed up their understanding of the local context, local regulations, as well as the local needs. So the right and most applicable financing facilities can be provided. I think that's the summary.
Pak Wito?
Thank you, Bu. Pak Enrico, as you know, we already been working with OJK on the policy framework. That's already ongoing. And I think the next natural step is to make sure that your audience, which is the TBK companies, the public listed companies, banks and non-banks, actually comply with that. I think you have a period of 4 or 5 years plan on the as stated by the POJK. And to me, this is the devil is on the detail. Establishing policy is something that you can, there's a lot, literally maybe 400 taxonomy out there that you can actually pick and choose, copy and paste. But the essence is how this is being carried out. And I think it will be, will surprise a lot of people. That's the extent of the resources, the extent of the, when I said resources are both funding as well as people. This is one of the issues that we're facing, trying to implement our ESG in Indonesia is the lack of, professionals who are, because this is something new for Indonesia. So the capacity as a nation needs to be built up. So, so I think, Pak Enrico, the next step would be, for us, actually take this to the working level. The working level meaning that, establishing the framework, the management system, how that actually will be integrated as part of the process, the business process, the operational process, the legal process, as well as the risk management process. They all need to be integrated and also, what type of system investment are required. It's almost like creating another credit process. At least that has been my experience. So, in every single process, the ESG people actually get also involved. It can actually increase the number of your headcounts. So, so this is what we are, actually, Pak Enrico, if we may, that we work together with, and it is important for us as a country to achieve that. Bu Sri Mulyani earlier said that there's a lack of credibility in terms of whether we achieve that green status or not. I mentioned earlier about my discussion with my friends and local banks, and then it's actually, there's a long way to go. So, but, I think,
to have that shared mindset, I guess, right?
To change the mindset, that is very important feature, book. And to make sure that we get there by 2024, if I'm not mistaken, the target,
2024 is the election. So
okay, you don't want to
that's,
do that.
that's a different target.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Silakan, Pak Enrico.
Okay, yes, if I may respond to the comment from the previous speaker, Pak Wito. So, I think if we want to really look the implementable, workable projects, as I mentioned before that we are very much supporting this journey, but of course, as also Pak Wito said, that this kind of financing green project is different because of the risk level and the need of the huge amount of funding, of course. Also maybe the longer tenor needs, So And we have seen that PTSMI or IIF have a very unique position in this matter, and also shared by Pak Wito and also Pak Dana that I think we need to share as much as possible the success story, the ideal workable project, green project that well guarded, well managed by PTSMI or IIF, including the ESG requirement, etc., to copy paste, to replicate this, and of course, as much as possible, also involving the main financier in this country, of course, like banks and also other financial institutions, also our capital market. So we will see the champions of this kind of projects. And by nature, if we compare like the banks and SPV or SPV like PTSMI, basically by nature, the banks have a lower funding costs, but more amount of funding sources. So that's at least the comparative advantage embedded in the banks. But whether the banks in their, I don't want to see the old ways, but all the parties have to really doing or have an intention to explore more, explore more the risks and the opportunities, balancely, of course, to make, again, the workable and implementable projects with well guarded, including how to sharing, to leveling the risk, so the project could be feasible by everybody in that particular scheme. Thank you.
Last but not least, Ibu Mashita.
Thank you, Mbak Andini. So a lot has been said and discussed globally and also at the national level, also at this stage, and we're competing with lunchtime. So I'm gonna make it short. I think we have discussed everything under the sun today, but we are focusing more on the supply side of things, how we can provide more green energy, more green industry, for example. But we should not forget that there's a demand side for it. We have to educate also the consumer, us included, to use and demand more greener products and also services, because without the demand side, this is what happened in Indonesia and many countries that started with the carbon market. You start with the supply of the carbon. In the supply market, if you have a lot of supply, no demand, then price will go down. And the European has experienced this before. So we could fail to internalize the externality that has been caused by this climate change. Number two is that this is part of Indonesia G20 deliverable, is that we have recognized a green activity, right? When we issued green bonds, we have green and less green categories and stuff, but we fail to recognize a transition activities. So in energy, for example, if you want to phase out coal, it cannot be categorized as green investment, so you cannot access green financing. With Indonesia Sustainable Finance Working Group deliverable this year for our presidency, we created a new term, Pak. It's called transition activities, transition finance, and hence it will need another taxonomy. So I think Mbak Andini questions is how can we see progress now? I think it's by doing it now. And we can use the stage that has been given for Indonesia as G20 presidency today to showcase, this year, to showcase to the world part of our project in terms of transition. And we're going to start from one of our biggest source of carbon reduction, which is the energy sectors. And I hope we can deliver this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we agree that this climate change is everyone's issue, and we're here to work on it and have our own contribution towards it. Thank you very much to all the speakers, Pak Enrico, Ibu Mashita, Pak Jiro, Pak Pradana, Pak Wito, and also Ms. Zalina. Thank you. Thank you very much for your thoughts and views, and I will give the floor back to my partner, Andrea.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. A round of applause for our amazing session. Thank you, Ibu Andini, for moderating a very fruitful and insightful session. And Bu Andini, and to all the speakers, please remain on the stage. Please come forward as we have prepared a token of appreciation as a kind gesture for your sharing session today. And for this, I would like to invite Bapak Darwin Trisna Jayawinata to hand the token of appreciation. Pak Darwin, please hand the token of appreciation to Ibu Andini. Bapak Wito, and Bapak Enrico. Terima kasih Pak Darwin. And next I would like to invite Bapak Renaldi Hermansyah to hand the token of appreciation to Ibu Masyita, Bapak Jiro, and also Bapak Pradana. Terima kasih Pak Renaldi, and we are going to have a photo session together. The first photo session with all speakers including Ibu Zalina Syamsuddin. Some photo opportunity, don't forget to give your best smile. Boleh kasih senyum terbaik Bapak Ibu sekalian. Ya, mungkin satu lagi, mungkin boleh kita kasih kepalan tangan ya untuk kesehatan, kesuksesan kita bersama tentunya. Atau boleh thumbs up juga boleh Bapak Ibu, atau kasih sarangeo juga boleh. Oke, boleh. Smile to the camera. Alright, boleh kita berikan tepuk tangan Bapak Ibu hadirin sekalian untuk sesi yang sangat luar biasa. Semoga memberikan banyak sekali manfaat untuk kita semuanya. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You may all return to your seat. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our event today. Once again, we would like to express our sincere appreciation for your presence today, ladies and gentlemen. And now, please enjoy the lunch we have provided for you in the foyer area in front of the ballroom. I'm Andrea Lee signing off. Thank you very much once again for your kind attention and your participation, and have a great day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.